When I was acting, my private life was very much my own. I don't feel as though I achieved enough in my career to stand out more than many other people.
Once upon a time, a young woman captivated the world with her beauty, talent, and grace. She wasn't just a Hollywood star, she was a legend in the making. A rising actress adored by millions, a muse to the greatest filmmakers, and the picture of elegance on the silver screen. But destiny had a different role for her, one far beyond the bright lights of Hollywood. She became a real-life princess, stepping into a world of royalty, wealth, and prestige. Yet behind the dazzling tiaras and royal gowns, behind the fairy tale romance and palace walls, lay a reality far more complex, a life filled with duty, sacrifice, and longing. And in the end, a tragic twist no one saw coming. Was Grace Kelly's life truly a dream? Or was she trapped in a story that was never her own? This is the untold tale of a woman who lived between two worlds, one of fame and one of fate, a legend, a princess, and a mystery that still lingers to this day. Before she became a Hollywood icon, before she stepped into royalty, Grace Kelly was simply a girl from Philadelphia, a girl with dreams far bigger than the world around her. She was born Grace Patricia Kelly on November 12, 1929, into a world of privilege and high expectations. Her father, Jack Kelly, was a self-made millionaire, a three-time Olympic gold medalist in rowing, and a man whose ambitions knew no limits. He built his fortune in construction, and in his eyes, success was not optional. It was a requirement. Her mother, Margaret, was a woman of poise and discipline, a former champion swimmer who became the first female coach at the University of Pennsylvania. Together, they raised their children in a household where achievement came before affection, where excellence was expected, and where anything less than perfection was simply not enough. Grace was the third of four children, growing up in the shadow of her older siblings, each one striving to earn their father's approval. But while her brother and sisters pursued athletic and academic achievements, Grace was different. She was quiet, introspective, and drawn to the world of imagination. She found solace in books, in storytelling, and in the characters she saw on stage. She wasn't the loudest or the strongest in the Kelly household, but she had something else, something intangible, a gracefulness, a presence, an elegance that would one day make her unforgettable. From an early age, Grace was sent to a strict Catholic convent school, where she was expected to uphold the values of discipline and obedience. She was a polite and well-mannered student, but she often felt out of place. While others excelled in mathematics and sciences, Grace was drawn to the arts. She spent hours lost in poetry and literature, drawn to stories that transported her beyond the walls of her structured life. But in a family that valued physical strength and practical success, the idea of pursuing something as impractical as acting seemed almost unthinkable. By the time she reached her teenage years, Grace's world began to change. She transferred to Stevens Academy, an elite private school in Pennsylvania, where she finally had the opportunity to explore her passions more freely. It was here that she discovered the stage, not just as an escape, but as a calling. She wasn't just playing roles, she was transforming into something new with every performance. The timid girl who once lived in the shadows of her family was beginning to step into the light. Her talent was undeniable, but in the Kelly household, talent wasn't enough. Her father saw acting as frivolous, a pastime rather than a career. To him, real success came in the form of hard labor, business, and sports, not in costumes and scripts. Her mother, though slightly more supportive, worried about the instability of an acting career. To them, Hollywood was a place for dreamers, not Kellys. But Grace was undeterred. Where others saw uncertainty, she saw opportunity. She didn't crave fame or fortune. She craved freedom, the ability to shape her own destiny, to become something beyond the daughter of a powerful man. And so, while her family hoped she would follow a more conventional path, Grace quietly laid the foundation for the future she wanted. A future far from Philadelphia, far from expectations, and far from the life that had been set out for her. She had a dream, and she wasn't going to let anyone take it away. New York City, the place where dreams are made, but only for those willing to fight for them. When Grace Kelly arrived, she wasn't a star. She wasn't even close. She was just another hopeful, another girl with a dream, trying to make a name for herself in a world that rarely opened its doors. She enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, determined to refine her craft. But there was a catch. Her parents only agreed to pay for a single year of tuition. To them, acting was still an impractical ambition, a fleeting fantasy. If she wanted to make it, she had to do it on her own. And so, she found work as a fashion model, posing for magazine covers and department store ads. With her striking beauty and natural poise, she quickly became one of the highest-paid models of her time. Yet, for Grace, modeling was only a means to an end. The real dream was waiting behind the stage curtains and camera lenses. Her first break came not on the silver screen, but in live television, performing in early anthology dramas, where actors had just one chance to get it right. These televised plays were challenging, but they gave Grace the experience and exposure she needed. Soon after, she made her Broadway debut, proving she had the talent to command an audience. Then, in 1951, Hollywood finally came calling. She landed a small role in 14 Hours, a crime drama that barely made a dent at the box office. It was an unremarkable film, but Grace's brief appearance caught the attention of someone who mattered, director John Ford. And when Ford spoke, Hollywood listened. He saw something in Grace, something beyond just beauty. And so, in 1952, she was cast in High Noon alongside Gary Cooper. It was her first major role, and it was a risk. She played a Quaker bride, a quiet, understated role in a genre that was all about action and intensity. But her performance resonated. She had a presence that couldn't be ignored, a rare elegance that set her apart from other rising actresses. High Noon was a hit, and suddenly, Grace Kelly was no longer just a model or a television actress. She was a movie star. But it wasn't just the audience who noticed her. It was Alfred Hitchcock. The legendary director had an eye for women who embodied both beauty and intrigue, and Grace was his perfect muse. He cast her in Dial M for Murder, 1954, where she played a wealthy socialite entangled in a deadly game of deception. She was flawless, icy yet vulnerable, elegant yet intense. Hitchcock knew he had found something special. He didn't stop there. Next came Rear Window, 1954, opposite James Stewart. As Lisa Fremont, she was chic, sophisticated, and daring. A woman who wasn't just eye candy, but an equal to her male counterpart. And then, in 1955, To Catch a Thief with Cary Grant, a film that solidified her as the embodiment of old Hollywood glamour. Every frame of her on screen felt like a painting, every movement deliberate and graceful. That same year, she delivered a performance that proved she wasn't just a Hitchcock muse. She was a force in her own right. In The Country Girl, 1955, she stripped away the glamour, playing the weary wife of an alcoholic musician. It was raw, emotional, and completely different from anything she had done before. And when the Academy Awards arrived, Grace Kelly walked away with an Oscar for Best Actress. She was no longer just a Hollywood beauty. She was one of its greatest talents. By now, she was at the top of the industry. She worked with the most legendary leading men: Clark Gable, Bing Crosby, Cary Grant. The world adored her, and so did many of her co-stars. Rumors of romances with Ray Milland, William Holden, and Jean-Pierre Aumont followed her everywhere. But Grace was never one for scandal. She carried herself with a quiet dignity, letting her performances speak louder than the whispers surrounding her personal life. She was the woman every director wanted in their films. She was the actress every designer wanted to dress. She was the star every man wanted to love. But just as she reached the pinnacle of Hollywood stardom, something unexpected happened. A new role was waiting for her, one that had nothing to do with movies, a role that would change her life forever. In Hollywood, Grace Kelly was royalty in her own right, but soon she would leave behind the flashing cameras and scripted love stories for something entirely different, a real-life fairy tale. Or so the world believed. It all began in May 1955 at the Cannes Film Festival. Grace, already an Academy Award-winning actress, was invited to a photo shoot at the Royal Palace of Monaco. There, she met Prince Rainier III, a man who ruled over a tiny but wealthy principality on the French Riviera. He was 31, charming, and in search of a wife. Monaco's future depended on him producing an heir, and he needed a princess who could elevate his country's status on the world stage. For Grace, the timing was perfect. Hollywood, despite its glitz and glamour, had begun to feel suffocating. She had conquered it all: awards, fame, admiration, but something was missing. She longed for a change, for something beyond the roles she played on screen. Rainier seemed to offer just that: a life of elegance, duty, and a new identity beyond Hollywood. Their courtship was brief, spanning months of letters, secret meetings, and whispers of romance that captivated the press. Then, in January 1956, Rainier proposed. With the engagement came tradition. Her family was required to provide a $2 million dowry, a customary gesture in European aristocracy. To outsiders, it seemed like an arrangement from a bygone era, but Grace was undeterred. She accepted, fully aware that this decision meant leaving behind everything she had built in America. The wedding preparations were nothing short of grand. Hollywood and European royalty collided as the world eagerly awaited the marriage of the century. MGM Studios, which still had Grace under contract, turned her wedding into a full-scale production. Her gown, an intricate masterpiece of lace, silk, and pearls, was designed by Helen Rose, the legendary costume designer behind some of her most iconic film looks. On April 18, 1956, the fairy tale unfolded. First, a civil ceremony, held in the palace throne room, where Grace officially became Princess of Monaco. Then, the next day, the grand religious wedding at St. Nicholas Cathedral, watched by over 30 million people worldwide on television. The guest list was a dazzling mix of European nobility, Hollywood elite, and dignitaries from around the world. As she walked down the aisle, draped in the exquisite gown, with a delicate lace veil framing her face, she looked every bit the princess from a storybook. But behind the regal elegance, one question lingered. Was this truly her happily ever after? With the wedding over, reality set in. Grace was no longer an actress. She was now Her Serene Highness, Princess Grace of Monaco. The transition was immediate and absolute. There were no more scripts, no more cameras, no more standing ovations. Instead, she was thrust into a world of protocol, strict traditions, and expectations she had never encountered before. She was expected to embrace her new role as a royal consort, to oversee charity work, attend state functions, and dedicate herself entirely to Monaco and its people. Every movement was scrutinized, every word carefully measured. The spontaneity and creativity she had once cherished in Hollywood were replaced by duty and responsibility. Though she wore a crown, she had lost something irreplaceable: her artistic freedom, her career, and perhaps a part of herself. The world had watched her become a princess. But behind closed doors, she was still learning what that truly meant. To the outside world, Grace Kelly had stepped into the perfect fairy tale. A Hollywood star turned real-life princess, draped in jewels, living in a palace by the sea. But behind the grandeur of the title and the regal facade, reality was far more complicated. Life as Princess of Monaco was nothing like the films she had once starred in. There were no rehearsals, no second takes, only duty. Her days were filled with formal engagements, diplomatic obligations, and the constant weight of expectation. The people of Monaco adored her, captivated by her beauty, elegance, and devotion to charity. She was the very image of a perfect royal consort. But inside the palace, she felt trapped. The freedom she had once known, the creative energy that had fueled her acting career, was gone. Hollywood had offered her a life of passion, movement, and artistic expression. Here, every aspect of her existence was dictated by tradition. She had played many roles before, but this time, the script was not hers to write. Despite the isolation, Grace embraced motherhood with love and devotion. She and Rainier had 3 children: Princess Caroline, Prince Albert, and Princess Stephanie. Becoming a mother brought her immense joy, and for a time, it was enough to distract from the loneliness she felt in her new life. Yet even motherhood came with challenges. The pressures of raising royal children, ensuring they adhered to tradition while protecting them from the relentless media, became an ongoing struggle. She longed to give them a childhood untouched by the constraints she now lived under. Her marriage, too, was not the picture of perfection the world imagined. Though Grace and Rainier had once seemed like a storybook couple, cracks began to show. The pressures of royal life took their toll, and soon rumors swirled of infidelity on both sides. There were whispers of Grace's close friendships with powerful men, including Frank Sinatra and David Niven. Some speculated that these relationships went beyond mere companionship. Meanwhile, Rainier himself was rumored to have his own indiscretions, engaging in affairs outside the palace walls. To the world, they remained the perfect royal couple. But behind closed doors, they were 2 people struggling to hold together a marriage under constant scrutiny. For Grace, the loneliness deepened. She missed the creative world she had left behind. She longed to return to acting, to step back into the artistry she had once lived for. But Rainier, fiercely protective of Monaco's image, would not allow it. A princess, he believed, could not also be a movie star. And so, Grace Kelly, the woman who had once commanded the silver screen, who had captivated audiences with her talent, found herself playing the most challenging role of all: a princess locked in a life she could no longer change. Her story had become the fairy tale the world wanted to believe in. But inside the palace, it felt more like a gilded cage. For years, Grace Kelly had lived the life of a princess, bound by duty and expectation. But deep inside, she never stopped longing for the world she had left behind. Hollywood, had not forgotten her. In 1962, Alfred Hitchcock personally reached out, offering her the lead role in Mourning. It was a chance to return to the silver screen, to step back into the artistry that had once defined her. But the fairy tale had its rules. Rainier and the people of Monaco disapproved. A princess did not return to Hollywood. And so, with a heavy heart, she declined. Instead, she poured her passion into Monaco's cultural scene, supporting local arts and theater. It wasn't the same as acting, but it was the closest she could get. Years passed, and life continued under the weight of royal expectations. But on September 14, 1982, everything changed. That morning, Grace and her youngest daughter, Princess Stephanie, set out from their country retreat in Rock Aigle, preparing for the short drive back to Monaco. The car, a Rover 3500, was packed with luggage, leaving barely enough room inside. Grace, insisting on driving herself, took the wheel. It was a familiar route, one she had traveled many times before, winding through the steep, narrow roads of the Côte d'Azur. But something was wrong. Witnesses later reported seeing the car moving erratically, swerving dangerously along the mountain pass. Behind them, a truck driver honked frantically, sensing that something was amiss. And then, in a split second, disaster struck. As the vehicle approached a notorious hairpin turn, Grace lost control. The Rover veered off the road, smashed through a stone barrier, and plunged 120 feet down the mountainside, crashing violently through the trees before coming to a halt among the rocks below. The impact was catastrophic. A nearby gardener heard the deafening sound of metal crumpling, followed by a chilling silence. Rushing to the wreckage, he found Princess Stephanie, bloodied but conscious, struggling to free herself. But Grace was unresponsive, trapped in the twisted remains of the car. Desperate hands shattered the back window, pulling her lifeless body from the wreckage. Emergency responders arrived quickly, rushing both mother and daughter to Monaco's hospital. But the reality was grim. The facility, despite its best efforts, was ill-equipped to handle such severe trauma. Scans revealed the true extent of the damage. Grace had suffered multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and devastating injuries. And then, the doctors made a tragic discovery. Before the crash, she had suffered a stroke, likely rendering her unable to control the car in those final moments. For hours, the royal family remained at her side, hoping for a miracle. Machines kept her heart beating, but the prognosis was clear. That evening, at 10:30 p.m., the machines were turned off. Grace Kelly, Hollywood icon, beloved princess, mother, was gone. She was just 52 years old. News of her death sent shockwaves around the world. The woman who had once been the face of elegance, the embodiment of grace itself, had met a fate as tragic as any of the characters she had played on screen. A life of beauty, brilliance, and sacrifice had come to an end. Not in the glow of a film premiere or the grandeur of a palace, but on a lonely mountain road. On September 18, 1982, the bells of St. Nicholas Cathedral tolled through the streets of Monaco. The same cathedral where she had once walked down the aisle in a gown fit for a queen now became the solemn setting for her final farewell. Inside, the grand hall was draped in white lilies, her favorite flower. A simple yet elegant white casket rested at the altar, surrounded by mourners from all walks of life. Royalty, Hollywood stars, world leaders, and the people of Monaco, all gathered to say goodbye. Among them were some of her closest friends from the film industry, including Cary Grant, who sat in silence, visibly shaken. The world had lost a princess, but they had lost Grace. the woman they knew beyond the titles and the fame. At the head of the funeral procession, Prince Rainier III stood in quiet devastation. The man who had once ruled with confidence now seemed fragile and broken. He had lost more than his wife. He had lost his greatest love, his partner, the woman who had transformed Monaco into the glamorous destination it had become. He never remarried. For the remaining 23 years of his life, he remained alone, forever carrying the weight of her absence. As the procession moved through the streets, tens of thousands of mourners lined the roads, throwing white roses onto the path of her casket. Many wept openly, unable to believe that the woman who had once seemed so ethereal, so untouchable, was truly gone. And yet, even in death, Grace Kelly's story remained shrouded in mystery. Official reports confirmed that Grace suffered a stroke before the crash, but the exact circumstances of the accident remained unclear. Some speculated that brake failure played a role, as mechanics had reportedly inspected the car just days before. Others pointed to Monaco's rushed response, fueling theories that the royal family may have concealed key details about the accident. But the most persistent questions surrounded Princess Stephanie, the only witness to what happened in those final moments. Though she survived with minor injuries, Stephanie's account of the crash changed over time. Initially, some believed she may have grabbed the wheel, attempting to steer when her mother became unresponsive. Later, others suggested that she had been the one driving, a rumor that Monaco quickly dismissed. Whatever the truth was, Stephanie never publicly spoke in detail about the accident, leaving behind a trail of speculation that would never fully disappear. But in the end, Grace Kelly's legacy would not be defined by tragedy, but by the life she lived. Though her time in Hollywood was brief, it was enough to cement her as one of the most influential actresses of all time. Decades after her last film, she remained the gold standard of elegance, poise, and effortless beauty. She shaped fashion, inspiring designers like Dior, Givenchy, and Chanel, who continued to create collections influenced by her timeless style. The Hermès Kelly bag, one of the most exclusive handbags in the world, was renamed in her honor after she was seen using it to shield her pregnancy from paparazzi in 1956. To this day, it remains a symbol of sophistication. Beyond fashion, she changed royalty itself. Before Grace, European princesses were distant figures, bound by protocol and tradition. But she brought Hollywood charm and relatability to Monaco, modernizing its image and setting a precedent for future royal women. Decades later, figures like Princess Diana, Kate Middleton, and Meghan Markle would follow in her footsteps, navigating the delicate balance between celebrity and royalty, much like Grace had once done. Though she never returned to acting, her passion for the arts never faded. In her honor, Prince Rainier III established the Princess Grace Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting young artists, actors, and dancers, a way of ensuring that the next generation could pursue their dreams just as she once had. Through this foundation, Grace Kelly's influence extended far beyond the screen, leaving a legacy that continued to uplift others long after her passing. Grace Kelly's story remains one of the most compelling in modern history. She was a girl from Philadelphia who defied expectations, an actress who left an indelible mark on Hollywood, a princess who redefined modern royalty, and a woman whose life was filled with both extraordinary beauty and unspoken sorrow. Though her life was cut short, her legend only grew stronger. Every year, new generations discover her films, her photographs, her story, drawn to the same grace, elegance, and mystery that first captivated the world. Grace Kelly's life was the very image of a fairy tale. A Hollywood starlet, who became a real-life princess. But fairy tales don't always end the way we imagine. Beneath the glamour, beneath the royal titles, was a woman who longed for more. She gave up the stage, the spotlight, the freedom to create, only to find herself trapped in a world where every move was dictated by duty. Perhaps Grace Kelly was never meant to be confined by the walls of a palace. Perhaps she was always meant to shine, not as a princess, but as an artist, a visionary, a woman who lived on her own terms. Her story remains a symbol of elegance, beauty, and mystery, one that will never fade. Decades later, her presence lingers in film, in fashion, in the very idea of timeless grace. Though she is gone, she is never forgotten. Because legends never truly disappear. They live on forever.